Hey everybody, before you continue watching the video, make sure you give the channel a like and subscribe. Go and follow us on Instagram. Go and check out all the different social media scenarios. Make sure if you're enjoying the content, go there, like, subscribe, follow, so we can keep putting stuff out. If you've got any questions, leave a comment. All right, make a comment on either of our pages and we'll answer them as soon as we can.
Jim, just curious right now. Yeah. In Kuwait at that time, there was any martial arts happening there?
At the time, there was some judo, and there was Shotokan karate run under the Japanese Federation, and there were a couple of instructors. One was instructing the police, and one was instructing the army.
Okay.
And I ended up an instructor from the police, and
gotcha.
You know, my brother and I both did it at the time, and we were pretty good actually. So we ended up training for free as time went by. Yeah, it was an eye opener for me. But you got pretty fit from it. That was the main thing. Yeah. It was the. So I still look back and I think it was one of those things that pushed me into just training in general.
Yeah.
The fitness side is the most important, really. You realise that it's not just the skill, if you like, but it really keeps you fit. You're doing push-ups, you're running, you're doing a lot of exercise.
Physical discipline of the martial art,
And not so much karate, I would say to you, but there's a lot of humility when you do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Because you realise the belt really, at the end of the day, doesn't mean that much. It's more your attitude, and you have to train, if you like, and you lose all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where you learn, in fact. Whereas the other ones, you get promoted, you wear a belt, and everybody fears you almost.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of mentality. And you see that in some of the other martial arts, like Korean, etc., where it looks very fancy, but it's not very practical.
No.
Particularly in a constrained environment. And that's really the key to it. So
we've talked about this stuff a little bit, but I think like probably most of the martial arts at some point in time were somewhat effective and somewhat realistic under whatever situation of violence that they came from. And we've talked about this a heap of times too. Is like the basis of most martial arts came from some type of warfare or violence. With Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it came from judo and other things that was for samurai warfare. Then it was taught to the Gracie family, and then they adapted it for street defense and street fight. And that's what they did. They did street fighting. They did real effective movements because they literally tested it in that way, and that's how they built on it. And I think we've also talked about this a little bit, but a lot of the some of the Oriental martial arts that were kind of like pushed into more of a business frame kind of lost that effectiveness because it wasn't practiced in that way anymore. And like you could make the same argument for jiu-jitsu and that happening now.
100%.
Whereas like a lot of the more commercial gyms and things like that do practice jiu-jitsu don't practice it on the same level of effectiveness or self-defense aspect as it used to be practiced. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. It's just a natural progression as it goes towards that more sporty, like every inclusive lifestyle. For everybody lifestyle kind of activity. And yeah, it 100% loses a bit of effectiveness. I just think that's like an interesting thing to kind of.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, for me, a lot of it when I look at it, and there's a lot of martial arts, particularly taekwondos. They're very modern. They're not like they didn't start as many years like the Japanese arts did, but. I think the key to it is that, like a lot of it was changed into a Western perspective where you get rewards. So if you even look at the Japanese, in the old days you'd get a white belt, a brown, and a black, whereas they decided to split it into 12 different belts to give encouragement to the West because we like giving medals to people, and that's the way we're taught to encourage people. Having said that, I think a lot of these one has to look at as sports.
Yeah.
More than anything, they're not really useful
for combat
for street fighting. And the truth of the matter is, when you do end up in a street fight, and unfortunately I have, you realise that it comes down to a couple of things: who can punch the fastest, and who ends up on the ground and starts kicking you from the top. So the discipline falls out the window, because in a fight it's a melee. I reckon you, in most cases other than jiu-jitsu, you'd be better off to be a rugby player who can tackle people down to the ground and hopefully run fast and get away. But so it's a kind of, it gives you a false sense of, and particularly I think it gives kids a false sense of strength.
Okay.
And that's true in anything. I mean, but at least with jiu-jitsu, the one thing is, and which is much different, is that every time you roll, you literally are putting yourself under duress.
Yeah.
The guy's trying to choke
real
you.
duress,
It's real,
well, not simulated. Yeah.
Not simulated. Whereas you think about it, even if you're kicking somebody, you're really not going to kick him hard into the head, because it's not going to last too long. So you never get that, what I call, it's not to say it's bad, I'm just saying you will not get that. You won't realise whether you're good at it or bad at it. If you're all playing what I call a sporting game. Whereas with jiu-jitsu, you get underneath someone, he's trying to choke you, you either defend or you're going to get choked, and that's the difference.
Thanks for watching the video, guys. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure you give it a like, subscribe, and a follow. Check out all our different social media platforms. There's heaps of content coming out. There's different snippets and content on different platforms, so make sure you're on everything. And again, if it helped you out, recommend to somebody else, and hopefully it'll help them out too.